Good evening, everybody. I'm back with Robert Gwaltney, the author that is one of our International Pulpwood Queen and Timber Guys Book Club selections. He's got a new book coming out called The Cicada Tree. It will be coming out in January of 2022. And we're here tonight because Robert and I also have, besides books, a big passion, and that is films. So in conversation, we had last week our very first show, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. The wonderful story was by Tennessee Williams and made into plays and had every rendition you can possibly imagine. I'd forgotten that they'd had a show remake with Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner as the characters. I was on YouTube and happened to come across that. I'd forgotten all about that. What a great combo. But we had that last week. This week we decided that we would approach one of the most iconic and most loved films of all time. And I think it's timely because it's a hot topic right now, because the book was Margaret Mitchell's Gone with the Wind. And I read that years ago. It is a book that you will never forget. But most people always think they've read the book because they watched the movie. But we'll be talking about that. The movie is very little part of really the whole story of the book, but it was storytelling at its finest, and it was glorifying the Old South. So I'm going to begin with Robert's going to tell us his story of Gone with the Wind and how he first came into the book and the film, and then we'll explore some of these hot topics. Go ahead, Robert.
Well, it's good to see you, Kathy. It's good to be here with you again on a Saturday evening to discuss film. Gone with the Wind. I mean, right now, it's controversial, and we'll talk a little bit about that through the evening. But when I was a little boy, I first saw Gone with the Wind with my Granny Louise. We didn't even have, back then we didn't have video recorders or DVDs, so we'd have to wait for it to come on television.
Me too.
And I've never seen the film on the big screen. I've had opportunities to. Here in Atlanta, of course, they'll play it down at the Fox Theater on occasion, and they've done it in the park. But I've not ever had an opportunity to actually see it on the big screen. Hi, Stephanie.
Hey, welcome.
So I've not had an opportunity to see it on the big screen, but the very first time I saw it, gosh, I was a little boy and was watching with my Granny Louise, and it was a movie marathon. I think actually then they would play it over a course of 2 nights because the film was so long.
Intermission.
And I think that what struck me most, of course, I've always loved film and novels with strong female protagonists. And of course, Gone with the Wind is a coming of age story. When you first see Scarlett O'Hara on the screen for the first time, it's just breathtaking. And there's just something so magical about her performance. And I think that what I remember most, of course, I'm not a lover of cowboy films, and I don't love war, and you really can't romanticize those atrocities. But one of the things that shines through, and I think that's timely about Gone with the Wind, is the character Scarlett O'Hara and her resilience and and she was a flawed character, really. I mean, some of the differences between the film and the book is that the film actually glosses over some things. There's some moments that Scarlett O'Hara really, with her internal dialogue, you really get a sense sometimes of some darkness there. But at the end, she was willing to do anything that she needed to do to survive. And I think that that's what resonates with most people today.
When I was a little girl and she came out in that white, beautiful hoop dress with all the little green sprigs and the big hat, and she had the twins just catering to every whim, and Mammy was trying to shove biscuits down her so she wouldn't eat too much at the party. I'm telling you, the camera loved Vivian Leigh. I mean, it was beautiful. She was not the first choice for the film. She was the choice, but there were lots of other actresses and actors, for other roles that vied for these characters. But I was a Bette Davis fan, and Bette Davis really wanted that role. And in some ways, Betty Davis, I could see doing it too, because, the quote that you put up on Facebook about, Scarlett was not that beautiful of a woman, but she had a way of, when that eyebrow, there's something about when people have that one eyebrow that will arch, there's something about that I just find absolutely intriguing, whether it's on a woman or a man. But when she would arch that eyebrow and turn her head, I mean, nobody could turn away from her. She was so gorgeous and everything. And it was so really well cast. Now, as a child, I can remember that, oh, Ashley, I thought he was the biggest wuss in the world. I thought, how could she like this guy? He was so mandy pandy, and he also, Melanie was just too nice. Everybody, oh, Melanie, I want to be just like Melanie. I thought she is way too boring for me. So Scarlett was a little bit, but my actual favorite characters in watching the film wasn't Rhett Butler or Vivian Leigh or any of the main characters. My favorite character was Mammy, because she had the only common sense in the whole kit and caboodle. She also had a great sense of humor. I thought she was wonderful. And I always like those side characters, the ones that add, when they come into the screen's view, they steal the show, and Mammy always steal the show. And I like Belle Whatley. I mean, oh my goodness. I mean, here was this woman of ill repute, and
A
she,
dyed-haired woman.
a dyed hair, I mean, red-headed woman, those were the dangerous ones. All these stereotypes, it's so ridiculous. But what is the reason why the film, I think, was so good at storytelling, was we see a saga of turmoil of a young woman who really doesn't know what she wants in the world, but the seeds have been planted since she was a little girl, that the land, the place that you own, and you never let go of the land. And this all goes back to all the Ireland that you learn about when you read the big book. And it's, about being caretakers for the land and never letting it go. And there was something about her dogged determination she was not going to let anything happen to Tara, and she was not going to let anything happen to her land. And her relationship with Melanie was the most intriguing of all. I mean, when Melanie went into childbirth, my goodness, that was, and we've got we've got, what's the little girl's character? It starts with a P. Come on.
Prissy, yeah.
Prissy. I don't know anything about birth and babies. I remember as a little kid just going, just slap her, Scarlett. Get some sense into that little girl. She knew exactly what she was doing. But Rhett Butler was
by the wonderful Butterfly McQueen.
Oh my goodness, yes, absolutely. These characters were so, and I believe that Mammy, that was the first time, am I correct? That was the first time an African American woman won the Academy Award.
Hattie McDaniel. She was she was known for being a comedic actress, and she was surprised that she was cast in the role of Mammy. And of course, she was the first African American woman to win an Academy Award. But what was so awful, about that time in the era of Jim Crow, is that she couldn't even attend the Atlanta premiere.
Is that right? I missed that.
Yeah, she was not allowed to attend the Atlanta premiere, and she also was not allowed to sit in the ballroom the night of the Academy Awards, which is just, heartbreaking. And
I hope people never forget that, because I remember when Halle Berry got her award, and I watched it play the other day when they were watching the best of the award speeches, and how overcome she was by that. It's one thing to think, I think every kid, I used to practice winning the Academy Award. I don't know what I was going to be doing, because I never really wanted to be an actress or a filmmaker or anything, but I always wanted to win. because I always thought it was so great. You got to go up on stage, wear the fabulous gown, give the speech, and get the wonderful little Oscar, you know. So I've had many, many Pulpwood Queen Oscar parties, and we're working on one now. But what was your favorite moment in the film for you? What was that one moment that?
Well, there's that moment where she's married to Rhett, and Sue Ellen happens upon she and Ashley having a moment together, and it's this huge scandal. And there's
Oh yeah.
it's the night of Ashley's birthday party. I believe it's Ashley's birthday party, and Scarlett knows that she's being talked about. Red has already heard about it, and she pretends to have a headache. She doesn't want to go, but he makes her, and he picks out that iconic gorgeous red velvet dress that's form fitting. And of course, yeah, back then, I mean, clothing,
Or black. They didn't wear color.
it's extremely important, and you would not have worn a dress like that to a family gathering. So, she's there smoldering in red, but there's that wonderful moment, the camera pans in on her, and she is just gorgeous. That costume, the costume designer for Gone with the Wind was Walter Plunkett. And he
Yes.
was known for making these gorgeous historical costumes, and that costume was hand sewn by him. It's
And
lovely.
the dress out of the iconic curtains, the green velvet curtains, in Jefferson, Texas, they have the Scarlett O'Hardy Gone with the Wind Museum, and Bobby Hardy, who owns it, she built brand new. For 30 years, she studied Southern architecture, and she built her own Terra with the big columns. And I don't know if you can tour it now, but you used to be able to tour it. But each room is named after Scarlett's room, Rhett's room. Mammy's room is my favorite because the walls are entirely covered in 5 Cent Jones, which is an artist, an outsider artist from Louisiana. And then the bed is, one of those old iron beds with the brass things. And it has a big old red net petticoat thrown over the end of the bed. That was my favorite room. But next door is her museum. And it may be the most biggest collection now, but it used to be the second largest collection of Gone with the Wind memorabilia in the world. And she has 4 of the costumes. She's got Bonnie Blues. She's got the green dress with the chicken feet. Remember the chicken
Yeah,
feet
yeah.
from that little like lemon shaped hat, and with the braids from the curtain. And she's got the red dress, and Rhett Butler is in a mannequin, and he's got on the tuxedo. And I was thinking there was something else, but she's got more signed copies, more posters. And I didn't realize this, but how there was a zillion Shirley Temple dolls. Well, there's a zillion takeoffs of things that were made that were Gone with the Wind. And one of the biggest things they did was they did headscarves. And they would have Tara on all 4 of the corners, and roses, or Scarlet and Rhett in the middle. They had dishes. She's got everything there. And I remember the first time I went there, I bought the Gone with the Wind paper dolls. And then I bought the pattern for that white lawn dress at the beginning of the movie that is the exact replica where you could make the dress. I don't know. I just wanted to have it. But she's got a gift shop and everything. And if you ever get a chance, right after I posted your post today with the poster and are doing this show, I went back and I posted the Beauty in the Book show that I hosted with Melanie Benjamin, who is, she wrote the autobiography of Mrs. Tom Thumb. She's got wonderful historical books, but Melanie was named after Melanie from Gone with the Wind. So when she came to Jefferson, Texas, we went and toured the Gone with the Wind Museum. So if you go on my Facebook page, you can see me giving the tour. And I'm going to tell you, I've lost a lot of weight since I did that, because I watch it and I go, holy cow, I never saw me from the back before. I need to lose some weight. But Melly and I went through the home of, so I wanted to share that too. But I agree. But I think one of my favorite things that Scarlett would do was when she'd get backed into a corner where some people would throw in the towel, she always would get that look. And I know it was like you could see the wheels turning in her head and the eyebrow go up. And the next thing you know, she was ripping the curtains down and having a dress made so she could go to town and get some money.
Right.
And I love that. And she had the scene where Melanie came to her aid at that ball and said, well, let's donate our wedding rings, remember, for the cause, for our fine soldiers who are fighting. Now, Stephanie's here, and I know your mother-in-law, this is her favorite film. Is that correct? This is Stephanie Chance. She's an author, and she owns Decorate Ornate and Decorate Ornate Tours just down the road from me, my best friend. And your mother-in-law loved this film. And how many times have you seen it, Stephanie?
Oh, I don't know. Alan loves to watch it too.
What?
Yes, Alan likes Gone with the Wind. And when I first met Alan, he brought me over to his mom's house, and she had this huge life-size silhouette cut out of Scarlett O'Hara, and then she had a whole section of her own Gone with the Wind, collectible plates, and then Charles being in the movie in Hollywood, he got the film, one of the film strips things, and she just had all of this really amazing collectibles of Gone with the Wind, because every time it was her birthday or whatever, Charles would make sure she had something from Gone with the Wind. And yeah.
Well, Bobby, when I was living in Jefferson, she had a semi pull into town one, I don't know, spring or summer. And she had a Gone with the Wind. It was called Tara in Texas. And she brought in the original Bonnie Blue, who is now in her late 70s, I believe. And they had a tea. And what happened in Jefferson, Texas, which was the bed and breakfast capital of Texas, is every Gone with the Wind fan, you know what they're called? Gone with the Wind fans?
No.
Wendy's. They started pouring into my shop. Well, I knew they were coming. And you know how Scarlett always wore, the big jewels and jewel tones. Well, I ordered in from Czechoslovakia all these green and ruby clip-on, Czechoslovakian glass jewelry. I had the best weekend of my life. I sold every Gone with the Wind book. I tried to get in as many things as I could. And one of the things that I brought in was there's a book called Scarlett that came out, and I couldn't find it tonight because I've got still half of my stuff in storage, but I've forgotten about this book. It's called Rhett Butler's People by Donald, um, I guess it's pronounced McCaig, but it was an authorized novel based on Margaret Mitchell's Gone with the Wind. It was his side of the family, and I'd completely forgotten about it. It says the other side of the greatest love story ever told. And it's meant, I don't even know, it's even got, this wonderful, end papers in the book. It's a beautiful book, but I have a whole collection of Gone with the Wind books and different things, but it is a first edition, but it's not autographed. But I do think I have an autographed edition of Gone with the Wind. And I had one of my daughter's best friend's grandmothers knew that I loved first edition things. She had an original Gone with the Wind poster. And she came in one day and she goes, this has been sitting by my refrigerator rolled up for years. I'm going to give it to you. And I had it framed. And Margie Dilday was over here one day and she goes, is that a Gone with the Wind original poster? And I said, yes, it is, Margie. And she goes, oh my God, my grandson would kill for that. And I said, well, let me ask my daughters if they want it. If they don't, I'll give it to him. And so I did. I gave it to her grandson. So she's got it. But I have an original Wizard of Oz poster. And my Wizard of Oz poster, the original, she's wearing a pink gingham dress. And I have it hanging in my kitchen. And then one year all my authors got me for my 10th anniversary a big thing of The Wizard of Oz with the original film roll and the last Munchkin's autograph. And he's since passed. So, which, by the way, this is totally off the subject, but I just heard Larry Mcmurtry died.
Yes.
At the Last Picture Show. And, you know, I didn't hear about it. I can't believe it. Usually when somebody likes that dies, you hear, you know,
Yeah.
Lonesome Dove. And I mean, he was iconic here in Texas, and I just heard about it. And I remember when I had my grand opening of Beauty in the Book, I emailed him, and he had the bookstore up north of Wichita Falls, up that way. And I said, hey, Larry, would you like to come to the grand opening of, I'm opening this hair salon bookstore? And he bought a town, and every building in the town became a bookstore for his huge collections. And he sent me a fax. Remember fax machines?
Yeah.
He sent me a fax, and it said, Dear Kathy, sounds like a big time. Sorry, won't be there. Love, Larry Mcmurtry. And I still have it framed. But he was a super nice guy, and I know a lot of people that knew him, but just for the film world out there, Larry Mcmurtry is no longer here. And so buy his books. Cadillac Jack, I loved him.
Kathy, I don't know that we've even touched on Margaret Mitchell yet, but of course,
no, but we have to.
You can't talk about Gone with the Wind and not, speak of Margaret Mitchell, who wrote the book. But fascinating story in itself, and how that came to be written. I guess it was published in 1935, won the Pulitzer, I don't know, like 1937, and then the film came out like 1939, I think. And that's where I might.
And her original house is sitting in the downtown Atlanta area. And have you been through it?
Well, so
they did, didn't they?
So that place is burned down several times, but they've rebuilt it. So it's not really technically, it's really sort of probably more a reproduction, but I believe it sits where the original apartment house sat. So the Margaret Mitchell house, really, she didn't live in the whole house.
No, it's a room.
Her husband had this, she called it this really awful apartment she didn't even really care for, but she wrote the majority of the Gone with the Wind there. So I have toured it. I actually did take many years ago. I guess they call it it's like a small museum and conference center. Yep. But I actually had an opportunity to take a writing class there.
Oh, wow.
With David Fulmer, he's a local writer, a wonderful writer. And it was, and the whole time we were seated, you could actually see the original Scarlett O'Hara portrait that hung over the fireplace that Rhett Butler threw the whiskey at, and you can actually still see the stain, where the whiskey hit it. And then there's the front door of Tara that they have there.
I saw that. Yeah. Author Jenny Hilderman took me there, and I was surprised because I was expecting like Bobby O'Hardy's, where so much stuff. They have a lot of books, and I bought a lot of books there, but they really didn't have, you didn't see all the gift items. Like she has thousands of stuff in her museum. I mean, it's just crazy.
An interesting thing that I know we'll want to keep this rated PG, but a fascinating thing about Margaret Mitchell is that she loved, when she would travel to New York, she loved to go to adult bookstores, and she was fascinated with erotica. And so while she was writing,
wow, there's something I did not know.
While she was writing Gone with the Wind, she was reading erotica as well. So I guess that's perhaps maybe had some influence on some of the steamy, passionate elements of the book Gone with the Wind, but you would never know it.
Well, did you read her first book that came out? I have it somewhere. She wrote a book that was never published. And then I don't remember what year it came out. It starts with an L. It was like 2 words. And I should have looked it up before I came here, but I have a copy of it. And it's a little, I mean, she grew up in my grandmother's era, and those women were a little bit, they came from the flapper times, and those women were very, in a lot of ways, I think they were more, what's the word? Not brave, but
well, Yeah, I mean, maybe
I mean,
perhaps.
they're brave, but I mean, we're talking
Okay.
about they were very take charge.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
and Margaret Mitchell, talks about when I've heard, I've not seen her on film being interviewed, but I heard a recorded interview where she was talking about Gone with the Wind and people with gumption. And of course, I think that's how, she described Scarlett O'Hara. She was an individual with gumption, and she grew up where the family would come together on Sundays and sit on the front porch, and they would have all these older members of the family who would talk about all of these old war stories. So that's where she was able to capture, I guess, some of the inspiration for the novel.
I had a little boy come into the bookstore one time and he was in the fourth grade and he wanted a copy of Gone with the Wind. I said, my God, what for? He wanted to read it. And he said, I get 25 accelerated reader points if I read Gone with the Wind. And I told his mom, I said, it's really not appropriate. I mean, the war scenes and the amputations and everything, I just couldn't imagine a fourth grader reading that book. So I talked her out of it. But I remember when I read the book the first time, it's pretty graphic. I mean, when she went to help at the hospital and, but that was a really,
And I think that the largest failing, I guess, of well, first, I guess we have to recognize that the book and the film are both products of the time.
right,
But of course, there are racial and ethnic prejudices that
absolutely.
they're very unfortunate. And one of the things that both the book and film failed to do was to explore, the atrocities of slavery. It's sort of glossed over, and of course, that's a very shameful period in the time of the South, of course. And I think that that's probably what the book, of course, is criticized. I think that many scholars believe that the film should be, and some Black scholars as well, that the film should be viewed as it was originally intended, but when having conversation about it, it should be contextualized, recognizing, yeah, all of those things that we just talked about. It certainly wasn't okay, and it's not okay today. But we learn from our past and from our history.
It wasn't until I took an African American history course a couple of years ago in college that I even became aware of how many things I had in my house that, where I had some sheet music, with Negro spiritual, but the drawings and rendition, I just thought it was beautiful. But I realize now that, their lips were exaggerated, they were red, they were made to look, they always have them playing a banjo, kind of
That
like
makes it
Aunt
look
Jemima, uh,
grotesque. Yeah.
and all these things. But when I was a kid, I guess I romanticized the South. Is that I bet the beautiful plantation home, but nobody ever should forget that nobody should ever be treated in slavery for. But they made it look like everybody's just happy,
Right, and
and
certainly.
it wasn't until I was a grown person that I realized that so much of the it's almost like a propaganda of thinking of that. But it was brought home to me very clearly when I took this class because I had a professor from up north and he talked about things that we just take like he goes, there's actually stores in East Texas that carry mammy things. And I was thinking, yeah, I could probably name about 10 different stores I know of that have um, and even the fact of the matter is, here in Hawkins, Texas, it's known as the pancake capital of the world because a woman, this family grew up here, was picked to be the spokesperson for Aunt Jemima pancakes. And there's been big controversy because there's um, a, a historical marker in town talking about her, and her family's upset that they made him change the face of the logo that was her aunt used to play. It's kind of a weird place, but we need to learn from the history, but we also need to learn. Even the music now, I kind of cringe a little bit about some of the music that was not so much the theme song, but they're either
Well,
whistling
there was the
Dixie or
Dixie, there's sort of that whole Dixie thing that they sort of play into the score, of course, and it's just representative of the Confederacy, and of course, they in Gone with the Wind, the Confederates are considered to be the good guys when in fact they really aren't,
well,
they weren't
the
fighting for.
only winners in war is nobody. I mean, everybody loses when we have people going against people in
Of course.
different parts of the United States going against, and it was always about money and commerce. Everybody's, you can change it to whatever you want it to be, but it was basically about how we can manufacture goods the cheapest, most possible way and make the most profits. And nobody wants to be in servitude, so the rich get richer and the poor get poorer.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
We
when
need
you
to
have a
learn from,
whole civilization built on the backs of slaves, and it's just a shameful period in American history.
but
Um,
you need to read the whole book to really understand that the movie just covered
yeah,
a
yeah. I mean, the
minuscule
book
part of the
is
bigger picture.
enormous. But yeah, and I think I believe that if you were to distill down what that novel was meant to be, I mean, I feel that it's a coming of age story, and it's a story of resilience. I think that when people watch that film, they watch that film to watch Scarlett O'Hara struggle, and um, to overcome obstacles in her life. And then of course, you see the trajectory, very early on in the film, you see her in that white virginal dress and she's got that little red belt and the red earrings. So you have this sense that she's young and but she's got that sense of fire about her. They're very smart how they costumed her, and you could see her. I mean, she was basically a child when the film starts, and she romanticizes Ashley Wilkes. She sees him as being this knight in shining armor, and of course, as we all do, as we grow and we have experiences, she first of all didn't really care respect for the land. Of course, that's something that she came to value, and then of course, later she understood that her one true love was there before all the time. She just failed to see it. So I think that I think those themes are timely or timeless.
Yes.
They're universal.
And here she thought her parents would always be there to take care of her, and then the roles were reversed and she had to take care of everybody, and even her arch enemy in Melanie. She ended up that was to me the most interesting story of all, was the relationship between Melanie and her, both in love with the same man, and how each one handled it so differently. I often think, which one would I be? If you were going to be Melanie or Scarlett, which one would you be? Would you be an Ashley or would you be a Rhett Butler? I have to say that I still to this day don't understand why anybody thought Ashley was the guy, but I
Yeah,
do.
I mean, I think romantically, of course, I think you've got your Ashley camp and your Rhett Butler camp. Of course, it's hard not to be drawn to Rhett Butler. There was just something dangerous and dark about him, but he was smart. And he went after what he wanted, and so did Scarlett. So that's why they were beautifully suited for one another.
Beautiful, beautifully cast, and always made us wanting more. But do we really? Do we really? I think the story, no matter who comes and goes before or after it, it's going to be one that will go down in the history books. And for a while, we'll talk about how it's politically incorrect. But for that matter, I grew up loving the Little House on the Prairie books, and I'll never forget when those books were banned. They're one of the most banned books because they found that Ma was scared of Indians, and they felt in North Dakota the schools wouldn't let them read it because they said it was derogatory to Native American Indians. And I
I hadn't
go,
heard that.
but you have to look at the times. If you've got white people coming in, taking the Native American Indians' land, there had to be some kind of conflict at some point, and there had to be people scared. It's everybody's fighting for power today. I mean,
Well,
that's what it's all about.
and
Is
oftentimes, we're frightened because we're ignorant about certain things. We let fear take hold, and where we, just don't understand the truth sometimes in the matter. So we make ourselves afraid of other people and groups and organizations that we don't necessarily relate to, have a frame of reference within. So I think that, yeah, it's unfortunate. And I've not heard that about the House on the Prairie series. That's interesting.
Yeah, I used to do banned book week every year at this bookstore I worked at, and I'd sign people up to read live in the front window display for an hour at a time, to read to children or read to people. And it's always fascinated to me, which books are the most banned. And they're To Kill a Mockingbird, Little House on the Prairie, and now I'm sure Gone with the Wind. But we learn from the read, and the difference between today and when it came out is now what I'm trying to say, and by the Book and Film Club and by everything that we're doing with our book club, is that we need to have real conversations, and we just need to hear it. It would have been really nice if we'd had somebody here tonight from the African American community to talk from that point of view. We'll have to do that next time. We'll have to bring in somebody who would like to say, as a little child, what was that? How did that movie make you feel? I always try to put myself in somebody else's shoes, no matter what. But
Yeah, I think that, one of the criticisms about, the way that the script, obviously, it depicts some of the Black characters as being inept and not smart. And of course, we know that's not true. But I believe that, what I give Hattie McDaniel and Butterfly McQueen great credit for is that, they did the best they could with those roles and did their best to bring dignity to the characters that they played. I know that it had to very, very controversial when you get back and read the history. And I can't recall if the NAACP was in place at that time, but there was an organization that was in conversation with David O. Selznick Productions, and there were certain things that they didn't want to have happen, in that film. And one of them was using a racial slur. And because of their work and their advocacy, they were able to ensure that some of that language was not used in the film. And Butterfly McQueen, stood up for herself. And I think there's a scene where I think that Scarlett O'Hara strikes her, and she says, I will play that scene, that she cannot hit me. And so, I guess they did what you would call a stage slap. But it's and I think that many of the characters, many of the Black actors were torn. This is our work, but do we do this film? And they did, because that's that was their bread and butter. But I think that they did the best they could with what they had to work with. And Hattie McDaniel was a wonderful actress, and and luckily, at least, she was rewarded with an Academy Award.
she deserved it. She was awesome, and her conversations with Rhett Butler were hilarious. And I'm telling you, I felt like she stole the show, and that would be hard to do, going up against some of the.
Her filmography is immense. I was looking through. Just film after film after film. Of course, I know that she played a lot of domestics. That's how she was cast, but. I think she herself was resilient to have survived Hollywood and to have survived that time. So she's fascinating. I would really like to learn a little bit more about her. I know that Queen Latifah played her in an FX original. I think it was called Hollywood, and it was fascinating. On that same line, could you have imagined Tallulah Bankhead having played Scarlett O'Hara?
No.
No, she wanted that part.
That is one person that I just could not. I could see Betty Davis. I could see, because she did Jezebel, and she did it so well. But I just no. Tallulah Bankhead was just a little bit out there.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, she could have never pulled. She never could have pulled that off. They offered her the part of Belle Wattlin, and she just told them to go to hell. She goes, "No, I'm not going to play Belle Wattlin."
I love it. Well, it's all fascinating, and I just still think about all those women that came streaming into town and they were called Wendy's. I'd never heard that before.
I never heard it either.
And where do they, I don't know where they all came from. Maybe, I don't know, some all over the place. They came from everywhere. But you talk to most little girls anywhere in the country that I know, and you ask them, what was the film that you remember the most? And they will tell you, you know, Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind. I mean, I used to think I was so original in the films that I love, but the same films that I loved are beloved by everybody.
Yes.
But it will be interesting what our children or, you
What
know,
will be the
grandsons,
classics?
yeah,
Yeah.
what will be the classic? I had to laugh. Beverly Cleary also passed
Oh,
away,
I know. It broke my heart.
104 years old. And I remember reading her books in junior high. And I just ordered The Mouse and the Motorcycle for my grandson because he loves mice. He likes watching them on YouTube. That's the craziest thing. And I just think, you know, look at that woman's breath. She was 104. Now, Margaret Mitchell died very young. You know how she died, don't you?
49.
You know how she died, don't you?
Yes, it's tragic. She was struck by a taxi.
Yes, she
Mhm.
was killed. You know, she was hit by a car and killed, and and she was really in the prime of her life.
She was only 49.
I know it's one of those things, but it'll be interesting to see what's going to be the classic stories. I'm thinking to myself, what pulpwood queen authors are going to be considered? You know, the Eudora Weltys, the Tennessee Williams, you know, the Margaret Mitchells, you know, of the next generations. It'll be interesting. That's why I always watch the Oscars, because so many of the films that win are based upon books. And I've seen a lot of them this year. A lot of them are foreign films. So, you know, White Tiger and Menorah is set in the United States, but, and then I watched A Piece of a Woman. Oh, my goodness, that was a powerful film. And I'm watching The Sound of Metal, finishing it up tonight. But Stephanie, what was your favorite film growing up? Do you remember?
No, I liked all the classics too. I loved The Wizard of Oz and all of that era, you know.
Wuthering Heights, and I loved Wuthering Heights, and I loved, but I'm a child of the 70s and I was into Dark Shadows. I was into some pretty crazy stuff when I was
I love Dark Shadow.
oh, me too.
That's
And
another whole
I
episode.
I
Yeah.
loved it, but you know that it was the I like shows that build up, you know, a scene with, you know, storms or tempest, you know, or you know, electricity and lightning, and but you never, you know, you don't really see a whole lot of violence. I just watched a film the other night and I just walked away and just I was like, I just watched that whole film and I can't believe what it's kind of like Outlander or Game of Thrones. You watch things and you think, how did I just, that was the most violent thing I've ever seen in my life. But the story was so good, I kept watching it, you know. But it'll be really interesting what the future will hold for everybody. What do you think? Do you think they'll still keep playing Gone with the Wind in the theaters?
No, I don't know. I think that, you know, there was one streaming service that pulled it, you know, this past summer. I guess it was middle of spring, almost summer, you know, when we were in the heat of lockdown and we'd had all of the social unrest. And, you know, I guess it was such an emotionally charged time. I think that people, from what I could tell, and I was doing a little bit of research, I think that most individuals, I think it's very mixed. You know, you got, you know, it's very polarizing, this film and this book, and for understandable reasons. I think that that calm and level heads will prevail, and people will say, okay, like we said earlier, it's a product of the time. Let's watch it as it was intended, but let's have conversation about what they didn't get right.
Right. And I think that's how we proceed ahead, because that's how we learn from our history. But you have to know your history, and if we try to mask it, then people will forget it even happened. You know, there's a lot of people today that don't believe the Holocaust really happened. I'm going,
Or that they land, or that we landed on the moon.
right. Or that the earth, there's these people that believe the earth is really flat. Will just fall off when you get to that edge. And I think, oh my goodness, you know, I can't imagine watching the man land on the moon when I was in the 9th grade. That was like one of the biggest things of my, you know, childhood, was seeing that's, you know, landing. I just can't imagine. But also the most iconic things that stick in my mind was when JFK was shot and my mother was crying, you know, and I remember we sat in front of our television and we watched the horse-drawn carriages, you know, take his body and the little boy saluting. And I remember that so well. And I'm sure all of you remember where you were when 9/11 happened. I know I was doing a haircut when I got a call. Someone told me they bombed the World Trade Center, and who's they? Who's they? And I turned on the news, and I watched it one time, and I used to have sales conferences in the top of one of those, and it's now airspace. That is a really, really weird feeling. But and then, you know, the hurricanes that have hit, Hurricane Katrina, all those things will be defining moments, or all the Sandy Hooks, or all these mass shootings and killings. There was one in Virginia Beach. There, you know, all these things will be remembered, but we have to take those things and not cover them up. We have to remember them so we won't repeat those mistakes. So that's why books and films are important to read, and even so more important to discuss and have community with. Um, I never really, before I took that African American history course, I never understood what people said white privilege was, but I understand it now. I think we're so sheltered that even as I'm talking about this right now, I'm thinking about all of my friends from other countries, how they might perceive me. Well, of course, she thinks of it that way. She's, you know, white. And I used to get offensive about it, but now I'm like, they're right. You know, they're right. We all should really talk about it and try to be more kind and understanding and respectful of the the story.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stories we can learn from. And To Kill a Mockingbird, Gone with the Wind, even The Wizard of Oz. We can all learn from these stories. I've had more people tell me that they were never so scared in their life as those flying monkeys. I go, the monkeys and the witch didn't scare me at all. That isn't what scared me. It scared me that she wouldn't get back home. That was the only thing that frightened me. How's she going to get back home, you know, to Kansas? How's she going to get back there? And then why does she want to get there?
You know, I had a reproduction of, they were an original movie posters, but, you know, when I was a boy, a young teenager, I had Gone with the Wind movie poster framed along with Wizard of Oz movie poster in my room. And this is so,
That's why we're, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
and I'm just well, and then I had, this is embarrassing to admit, but I had a picture of Vivian Leigh on my nightstand of Scarlett O'Hara. I mean, that is, I mean, I'm so gay. I mean, I don't know how. And I just thought it was perfectly natural and normal, you know.
I think it's perfectly natural and normal, and I'm not gay.
I just thought she was lovely, and
She was, you could not take your eyes off of her. And the poster you shared today with her in that dress and him so strong, you know, I always dreamed some guy would carry me off into the sunset. Nobody can pick me up. Let alone carry me off into the sunset. They probably kill themselves, but you know,
she was so beautiful in the film that when I read the book some years later, and of course this is the opening line from Gone with the Wind. Scarlett O'Hara was not beautiful, but men seldom realized it when caught by her charm, as the Tarleton twins were. I mean, what a wonderful beginning line. And I remember being stunned, thinking, she's not beautiful. How can that be?
Well, you know, the people that I find the most attractive, it's not their looks that to me that I find them beautiful. One of the most interesting actors in the world, Stephen Buscemi,
Yes.
you know what I'm talking about?
Mhm.
I think
Fargo.
I love him in everything he's ever been in. And I see him and I just think he's the most handsome man ever. And then I've heard people tell him, you know, you're just not a very attractive guy. And I go, why are you doing that? We are the product of our parents' genes. This is how we're made. Why would you do that? And so, but I love him. I think he's so handsome and very sexy, and he's just one of the best actors out there. But I've always found that it's people always go, oh, you like them because of this. And I go, you know what I really like about them? I like the way they look out of their eyes, or how kind they are to their mother, or their wife. Or I go, those things make to me show the real beauty, what comes from within. And I think Rhett Butler was that way. Of course, Scarlett was gorgeous, but you saw how much he loved his daughter, and you saw how kind he was to the woman who ran the house of ill repute, who was such a generous woman. She was, helping the war cause, and I just think people need to learn who the people are and quit judging the book by its cover. But people do. And so that's why you want to put your best foot forward. But it's really the content of character of a person that makes them beautiful to me. That's why we're the beauty within queens. That's why we wear the tiara, because we're readers. We're beautiful within. And it's why the guys should wear the crown, because we all deserve to wear it. So another wonderful night at the movies. Now, I haven't gone online to see where you can watch it. Most people I know own the movie. But check out your favorite streaming service. One of them will have it, whether Amazon or Netflix or
Yeah,
Hulu.
Voodoo. I think I own it on. I actually own it's in my movie library, digital movie library on Voodoo.
Yeah, so I have a copy of it. All my favorite movies. The funny part about it is I don't even have a DVD player anymore, so I've got to get a new DVD player. But I usually find it. Any movie I want, except I still haven't found a place to find, and I can't find my DVD copy of Cold Comfort Farm. One of these days, we're going to have to, you've got to watch that. That's one of my, it's a 33 classic, British classic, same time frame as Gone with the Wind. And interestingly enough, Melanie Benjamin, who was named after Melanie from Gone with the Wind, her book, The Autobiography of Mrs. Tom Thumb, is about the littlest woman that ever lived. She was a perfectly formed woman, but she was less than 3 feet tall, was married to Colonel Tom Thumb, who was the star of Barnum and Bailey's, and it was an arranged marriage. A lot of people don't know that. She wrote a book about it. That time of when the woman who was Mrs. Tom Thumb was the same time that Gone with the Wind came out. And when you read the book, her story runs parallel to the story of Gone with the Wind. And she rode the trains. She dressed like, had to have special gloves made. That's another great read to read along with it, because the books run parallel in the same time frame of when she was alive. So another great night at the movies. And next week, we're going to have to talk about what we're going to do next week. I can't hardly wait to see. And then, it's Academy Award. Maybe we need to pick a Academy Award winning film, since it's the Academy Award month coming up in April. So you and I'll get together. Y'all will be back next week. Any parting words you want to say about Margaret Mitchell and this classic American read?
None other than tomorrow is another day.
It certainly is. And I do not want to eat some, rotten carrots.
Absolutely.
Hold it. That's my favorite line in the movie. I use it all the time when I'm having a bad day, or frankly, Scarlett, I don't give a damn. But I think that's paraphrased. But anyway, it's probably one of the most quoted or misquoted films, one of the most iconic films in our era, and we'll be talking about more. So every Saturday night, folks, 6:30 p.m. for the Pulpwood Queen Book and Film Club with Robert Gwaltney of Atlanta, Georgia, and Kathy L. Murphy here at Murphy's Law, and hopefully Stephanie Chance in Gladewater, Texas. We hope you'll be back, Stephanie, and we will be back. And thank you so much for joining us. This all is downloaded onto my Kathy L. Murphy YouTube channel. Please subscribe. And if you join my book club and subscribe to my channel for the month of April, you can come to our annual convention for $99. And we're going to have over 100 authors. You'll get to hear every one of them. That's $1 an author. I don't think you can beat that deal. And we've got some of the best authors coming, just as the ones are right here in front of us and have been the past week. So thank you again. Y'all have a wonderful night, and we'll see you next Saturday, Robert.
Thank you, Kathy. Good to see you, Stephanie.
Good to see you, Stephanie. I'll be in touch with both of you. Bye-bye for now. Time to make some popcorn. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.